Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the British Columbia Museums Association webinar. My name is Lorenda Calvert, and I will be your host for today. Today's webinar topic is Community Care in Action. This webinar is part of our Museum Week programming and celebrates today's theme, Togetherness. This webinar will be presented by Ryan Hunt, Executive Director of the BCMA, Regan Schrum, Assistant Curator for the Greater Victoria Art Gallery, Libby Oliver, a visual artist, Kelly Black, Executive Director of Ellice House, and Mary Forbes of the Potatoe House Project. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the BCMA offices are located on the traditional lands of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. We are grateful for the opportunity to live and learn here in mutual respect and appreciation. We also recognize the traditional lands of the many nations across British Columbia where the work of the projects described in this webinar have been carried out. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank our webinar sponsor today, Lucidia. Lucidia is a software solutions company based in Richmond, BC. They develop collections management software systems that are suitable for libraries, archives, and museums, both large and small. Lucidia's motto is, redefine how knowledge is shared, which is quite fitting for a webinar sponsor. We thank Lucidia for supporting BCMA as we seek to share knowledge through our webinar series. As I mentioned, I am Lorenda Calvert, your host for today. I'm also BCMA's Programs Coordinator. I have been with the organization for 2 months now, so please bear with me if there are any technical challenges. If you're experiencing technical difficulties, please do email our office. Vanessa, our Operations Manager, is standing by to assist, or you can use the chat function and I may be able to help you out. A bit of housekeeping before we begin. If you are reading this slide and hearing me talk, you are doing great. If you can't, don't shut out your screen because we won't be able to hear you. Simply use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. It may be hidden, so if you hold your mouse either at the top or bottom of your screen, the feature menu should emerge. Use the chat feature to ask questions or make comments. I will read your comments or questions out to the host. As we have 3 different presenters joining us today, we do ask that you hold your questions for the end of the presentation, and we have reserved some time for Q&A. As I mentioned, this month's presenters are Ryan Hunt from the BCMA, Regan Schrum from the Greater Victoria Art Gallery, Libby Oliver, a visual artist, Kelly Black from Ellice House, and Mary Forbes of the Potatoe House Project. Now over to you, Regan and Lily. Hi, and thank you so much for joining me, Libby Oliver and Regan Schrum. Libby Oliver is a visual artist, and Regan Schrum is the assistant curator at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria. We are chatting today about your listener in residence. So Regan or Libby, do either of you want to take that away and just tell me what this is about?
Libby, do you want to start explaining how it first began?
Sure, yeah. Okay. So the program first began when Regan and I began working on a intergenerational art program with the Luther Court Society. And we developed a program where I was an artist, or like a listener in residence, we called it, for this group of seniors there. And the role that I took on was going in twice a week and meeting with these seniors and having conversations. And then from these conversations and from these weekly visits, we would develop art activities, and I was doing their portraits, like their photography portraits. And this was a program, I guess it's been running for 6 months.
Yeah, November 2019, yeah.
Cool. And so we were heading towards the end of the program, which was going to accumulate in me doing the portraits of all the participants who I've been working with over the past few months. And then of course COVID happened, and so I've only done a couple of their portraits, and the program has been paused right now.
Mm-hmm. And then should
I now extend into how?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then from there, I kept contact with one of the seniors in particular, Victoria, and have been giving her regular phone calls and reading her poems and stories, and then felt that there was a need that we should be working with other seniors who are more isolated, because the quarantine is a lot more extreme for seniors right now.
So we expanded to, because of how many volunteers, I don't think we expected how many people would be wanting to volunteer. So we expanded not just Luther Court, though we had a good relationship and still do. We had a couple seniors from Luther Court Society, but also have now expanded to 5 different care homes. And then as well as Libby has connections through just random finding seniors who also need support. You're really good at finding seniors who need support. Yeah. And so we have paired about 30 different volunteers to different seniors, but have so many more on a wait list, and we're still trying to gather more seniors who need support. And even though, in BC, the phase 2 is going to start rolling out for senior care homes, they're still going to be in lockdown potentially for a little while. So it's important to still think about the seniors who may not have a chance to see family members, or have very little chance of seeing family members, or have no family members to talk to.
That's amazing. I'd love to know, Libby, if you're able to share, Reagan, if you're able to share what those conversations are like when you're chatting with these seniors. Libby, you mentioned sharing stories and poetry. Are you able to share a few more examples?
Yeah, I mean, I have me and another person, Janine, are calling Victoria, who's somebody who I'd been working with previously, and so there was a bit of a relationship built up there. So I guess a lot of it kind of starts with us checking in about our days, and maybe other people that Victoria talked to, and then I've been going through a lot of poems. It's also an opportunity, I think, for other people who don't have time to maybe be calling somebody and volunteering. I have a lot of friends who now are sending me poems and short stories. So that's like a way that they can kind of get involved without having to like directly get involved. And then sometimes they'll play like mind games. She in particular likes to do the game where you go through the alphabet and like each letter and try and find like a country name for each letter. So just things like that, I think, that kind of keep her brain active and my brain active. So, and then for other volunteers, I think it's been different for.
Yeah, I mean, from what volunteers have told us, a lot of times they've been sharing a lot of good news, which is one of the examples that Libby talked about, either sharing poetry or sharing articles of good news. There's a couple who were paired because both the senior and the volunteer really loved languages. So they just like sharing conversations in different languages, or in one case, the senior knows, the volunteer knows Dutch and the senior doesn't. So kind of teaching some new words. So it depends. We get a little, because we don't join in on the volunteers conversation. I just get feedback when I check in each week. So I hear little snippets of what's happening in the conversations.
That sounds so lovely. Just little relationships budding up everywhere and sharing back and forth different passions and interests. That sounds wonderful. I'm sure that's very helpful on both sides during these times when people can feel quite isolated or seeking out that good news as opposed to really dwelling on the bad news. It sounds like such a wonderful opportunity to share. Has there been any discussions about, like you mentioned, Reagan, the phase 2 is going to be happening in BC soon, but it will still affect seniors for quite a long time. Has there been discussions about the future of this project and what this will look like? Will it evolve or stay as something active?
I think this was always kind of a temporary while COVID was going on. as a way to kind of bridge Libby's work and kind of expand it so other people could help with the same themes that through Libby's work of, intergenerational connection, talking about loneliness and how to help make sure we have a little bit less loneliness, because it's actually one of the biggest killers for seniors in Canada, unfortunately. And so I think what will happen is, as we'll kind of continue to have place seniors and volunteers together, we also, for our wait list, because we have over 100 volunteers who are wanting to be assigned to seniors, we try to connect them to other programs. So there's also in BC the 211 phone number, which the government has set up. And then there's also a couple in the US as well. There's in New York, there's SAGE, which is pairing LGBTQ2 plus seniors with LGBTQ2 plus volunteers, and I think that will be kind of continuing until seniors are more able and enough these in the government's regulations that they can actually connect back to either family members or volunteers, because a lot of these senior care homes have volunteers who come and visit as well. Mm-hmm. Do you have any visions, Libby?
Any visions for the future of it? I think like what you were saying is that this was always meant to be a short-term reaction to a pandemic, and so not something that is long-term, but definitely hopefully planting a seed of how we can consider more vulnerable people in our community, and how we can like the step to connect with these folks is not maybe as challenging as we perceive it to be, and the distance doesn't need to be as far. Like a phone call, just something, and build a relationship through these like small actions in a weekly way. It doesn't have to be this huge change to your life. But yeah, these are more just hopefully bringing to the forefront how to consider other people who a situation that's impacting us all is obviously impacting some groups a lot harsher.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of the small actions, of just taking those small steps. And, once you take that first step, what can grow from that with a relationship or just good positivity that you can bring into the world. So that's a wonderful reminder. If folks wanted to find out more about this, where could they go to find information?
Through the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria's website. Right now we're still having the volunteer sign up, but folks who sign up now are more on a kind of a wait list, and we have more of a slow trickling in of seniors as we are trying to find. I think care homes in particular, there's a lot of things occurring, and making sure that basic needs are met first, and the health is of each senior. So I think as BC rolls out, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more seniors and we can connect more volunteers with seniors. But we are still looking to, we've had a couple people reach out of daughters or sons with seniors who they feel like they want more than family members to connect. So also they can reach out through our through contacting myself or Libby, and so we could connect potentially a volunteer with any senior member of their household that they think, or if the senior has outreach themselves and wants to connect with a volunteer.
That's so very, very lovely. Thank you so much for sharing this project and for chatting with me today about it. It sounds like it's really helping the community and being very well received. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I really, really appreciate it and hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks for chatting with us.
Thank you. So huge thanks to Regan and Libby for joining us. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now so that Kelly from Point Ellice House can share his. Kelly, are you good to go?
I am. Thanks, Lorenda.
My pleasure. Just give me 1 second. And I'm going to mute myself, but I am still here.
Terrific. Thanks for having me today. I'm going to share my screen here with everyone, and I'm going to show a little video while I talk. Hopefully it works. Let me know if it isn't, Lorenda. But I just wanted to start by explaining to folks a little bit about what Point Ellice House is. And Point Ellice House is a historic house museum in Victoria, in the Rock Bay neighborhood of Victoria. It's one of the oldest houses in the province, built 1861-62 for the Wentworth Wallace family. And the O'Reilly family moved in to the house in 1867. And they lived in the house until 1975, so 108 years in the same house. And in 1975, the province of British Columbia purchased the house and its collection. And along with that, in the early 2000s, the management of these sites was devolved to third parties. And so I am employed by the Vancouver Island Local History Society, which manages and operates Point Ellice House. The video you're seeing here is of our south garden, as has recently been restored. We're not quite done yet, but you'll see here the raised beds and some of the pathways that we built. When our society took over management of Point Ellice House, this south garden was overgrown. It hadn't really been used as an official garden in a number of years, decades really. There was a small demonstration garden, kind of just for looks, but that was about it. It wasn't really used for food production and this kind of thing. So one of our plans in our strategic plan and our business plan for the site was to return this area to food production. The South Garden site was historically the site of the well for the house, as well as a veggie garden, a cut flower garden, and an orchard. And beginning in the 1940s, the South Garden area began to fall into disuse. And in the 1960s, the last descendants to live at the house essentially turfed over the South Garden, and it became a grassy area. So the situation when we took over was that there was very little sunlight to the South Garden. Lots of elm trees had grown up and sprouted over the decades. Holly trees that were originally supposed to be pruned to 4 or 5 feet were now 30 to 40 feet tall. So there was a bit of work that was needed to be done, and we managed to get some funding from the provincial government to tackle this project. Now, being located in the heart of almost downtown Victoria, we are at Point Ellice House surrounded by waste management sites and landscape gravel mart. So on the face of it, it doesn't seem that there's much here. Lots of people don't know Point Ellice House is even in this part of town. But given this urban space that we have and this potential for food production, we really thought that this was a great way for the site to contribute to the community. And so we began reaching out to local organizations about ways that we might work together to grow food for the community. The gardens are also part of the one of the character defining elements of Point Ellice House. So not only was this an important project to contribute to the community, but actually what we're doing in this project is also restoring rehabilitating, I should say, the South Garden to its historic use. So we're actually returning some of the heritage value to the site that had been lost over the years. We call it a rehabilitation and not a restoration. This is some drone footage you're looking at. We call it a rehabilitation and not a restoration because we have some modern concerns that we have to take into account doing this. The landscape around us has changed. We have some buildings that now block out sunlight that weren't there historically. And we had to be careful because there's garden archaeology. You can see me walking in the bottom left in the gray of this video, and I'm walking on a historic path that we reinstated. We knew from past archaeological reports that this path was there historically, but we had to reinstate it, and it was something that we knew was at the site that we could do to bring back some of that historical character. The other thing you'll see in the bottom left of this shot, and we're in the South Garden here now with this drone shot, there's a pile of wood in the bottom left, and that is from the many trees that we had to take down. Of course, you can see from this video that the tree canopy is still extensive here at Point Ellice House. But in order to have an orchard, just like the O'Reillys had, we needed increased sunlight. And so these are some of the considerations we had to have. I'm being told that my video is paused.
Hi, Kelly. Yeah, it's a beautiful shot of the garden. Oh, there. Now
Let's
we
try
have
this again.
Yeah, now we have the drone view.
There we go. Sorry. So all that to say is that we had to balance our modern considerations for being able to grow food and grow food productively with the historical character of the site. And that involved a lot of background research on my part, going through past archaeological reports, past historical garden reports, and including the diaries of the O'Reilly family, just to see what they grew, so that we can balance growing some historical vegetables, heirloom varieties with some of our modern requirements. When the pandemic hit, we thought that possibly this project would be put on hold by the province, but luckily we managed to get it approved and sort of pushed through. And that was because the argument we made was that really growing food for the community was now more important maybe than it has ever been. And so that was really instrumental in having the funders of this project see that it actually can contribute significantly to the community right away. And so we'll be planting starts later this week. But one of the problems that we also encountered was we require, the assistance of volunteers to help us in the gardens. I do have one part-time head gardener, but it's 2 acres of heritage gardens, so there's a lot of work involved. And right now we can't have volunteers on site. So all of the staff that I do have, myself included, have actually been working to help the head gardener and taking some time from our normal duties to assist in the garden, because we all understand how important it is to get some of this food out there. And that goes to one of my second and final points, is that part of our taking over the site at Point Ellice House was reaching out to our diverse neighbors, from recycling plants to local breweries and we have a local florist, for example, just up the street. And we also have a Kool-Aid shelter in our neighborhood called Rock Bay Landing. And we reached out to Rock Bay Landing shelter to see if they had any need for fresh grown food from the neighborhood. And what they did is they put us in touch with their women's transition shelter called Sandy Merriman House. And Sandy Merriman House let us know that they would absolutely have a need for fresh vegetables for the people that use their services. And that they, would really benefit if they could, for example, have access to a fresh salad on a weekly basis during the height of growing season for the people who use their services. And so We also partnered up with the City of Victoria, who has moved their greenhouse production for parks and things over to food production. And so they've created a number of starts, various tomatoes and greens and things. And we've ordered from them, and we'll be planting a lot of these starts very soon. And it's just overall been a great way to connect with people we might not have otherwise connected with, and to make this historic garden relevant again, not just to a historic family, but to the overall Victoria community. So we're really excited by this, and this is just phase one. Phase two is to reinstate the historic greenhouse that was once at Point Ellice House. And when we are able to acquire some funding, either from the province or through grants, to build the greenhouse in the South Garden, we'll be able to really provide food to community groups such as the Kool-Aid Society on a year-round basis. And we'll be able to have our own starts on site, and we will again be contributing to the reinstating the heritage value at Point Ellice House. So overall, we're very proud of this project because we feel very strongly that we've really balanced this historic character with our present day needs as a community, as a society, not only during the pandemic, but when we see the other side of this as well. Of course, it's a lot of work, and we've been really encouraged by the visibility that this has given us in the community among groups and people who might not normally be interested in what Point Ellice House is up to. People who might be interested in urban food production or heritage gardening, but maybe not so interested in some of the other history that we have here at Point Ellice House. So overall, you know, it's allowed us to also expand our reach and awareness of what we can do and are doing here at Point Ellice House in Victoria. I'm happy to answer people's questions at the end of the webinar, and I hope that this has been helpful for people. And I look forward to chatting with everyone a little bit more at the end of the webinar.
Thank you so much, Kelly. That was absolutely beautiful. I felt like I was just taking a little walk myself through the gardens. That was fantastic. I'm just going to get my screen back up. Beautiful. And now I'm going to ask Mary from the Potatoe House Project to join us. Just stand by for one moment. I'm going to stop sharing, Mary, and...
Okay, sounds good. She prepaid.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. We can hear you and see you. I'm just going to go on mute so that you can take it away.
Thank you. So after visiting British Columbia's oldest heritage house at Point Ellice, we'd like to invite you to visit British Columbia's youngest registered heritage house, Potatoe House. Built in 1941, we are an example of a wartime house that celebrates not mayors or shipping magnates or millionaires, but everyday family that moved here during the Dust Bowl right after the Great Depression and set up downtown Williams Lake. So I'm standing on the porch of the Potatoe House, and over my shoulder is some people dropping off their compost and our composting program. Good morning or afternoon. And I'm going to give you a quick visual on what the house looks like and what we've got going around here. And then I'm going to be passing it off to my coworker, Oliver Berger, who is the compost king of the Caribou Chilcotin, where we're located in the belly button of British Columbia, Williams Lake. And we're super pleased this year to have some summer staff that have joined us as well. So you'll be seeing their smiling faces, and a project alchemist who writes amazing grants. And we're super thankful to be able to have summer students. So let me give you a little tour around this glorious location. Now, as I take you for a little walk, I want you to know that the staff here at the Potatoe House have not been paid for 5 years. So we've just, because of our amazing project, Alchemist has put some funding together, and now we have us and our students, and it's just glorious and very, very exciting, and we started on Monday. But of course, the old staff stayed working because we love our project, being the only second heritage designated house in Williams Lake, and also located downtown. High five, Point Ellice House. Love those downtown locations. All right, so here is the Potato House. It's a really simple story and a half with a hand-dug basement and a couple dormer windows upstairs. And while it's pretty original on the outside still, we're in the process of changing everything inside. So it's got enough electrical that we can have a 5-piece band playing in the garden for our garden gigs. And our water's all up to code. And our electrical is super skookum. This is our old fuse box. Do you guys have a fuse box that looked like this? Neil's fuse box. Yeah, that was it. It was the on-off switch. Thank you to our local arts organization that helped fund our new electricals. All right, and then this is our stage. This was originally our chimney. We call it the smokestack stage. And then people sit in this gardened oasis in the middle of an industrial area. We're surrounded by like tire and muffler shops and whatnot. And our little gardens, some of which are owned by local school packs. We've got some heritage apple trees. And here's our team following me around. There they all are. So in the foreground, there's Carmen. There's Chris, she's got her camera out. She's a founding director of the Potato House. Over here is Oliver. He's gonna be our composting king today. And Kyla. And the fine man wearing the bad driver hat, the aviators, and a down vest on a hot day is our project Alchemist. Hey, Chris. So that's just like a quick tour of the Potato House. It's been located in the middle of downtown since 1941. It's had 2 owners, 3 including us now. In 1956, it was bought by a family who moved here from Portugal, and we bought directly from them. So Alcina and Manuel Quintella, and they're the ones that gave the Potato House its name. They used to grow this entire yard in potatoes, and they were really well known for their subsistence agriculture.
Mary, we seem to have you paused or frozen there. Can you hear us? Sorry, folks, if we can just stand by. It looks like we may have lost Mary there, so we'll just give her a few moments and see if she can rejoin us. For the time being, I'm just going to share my waiting screen. Now, while we wait, if anyone wants to pop into the chat and share if you yourself have been to Point Ellice House or the Potato House Project, I'd love to hear about it. And if you are joining us here for our museum week, we do have another webinar coming up this Friday for Museum Week where we'll be looking towards the future. So we'll be just having some panelists joining us to chat about what the future may hold for our industry. And if you are also joining us for International Museums Day on Monday, we'll be showcasing some of our previous webinars where you can check those out on social media to learn a little bit more, explore, brush up on some professional development, And then quickly coming up on the calendar is Tuesday, May 19th. We'll be joined by the RBCM team where they'll be chatting about what they've explored and some thoughts they have in regards to reopening exhibits. So it doesn't look like we have had Mary rejoin us. So maybe we'll just skip ahead to the question and answer period for Kelly. Kelly, are you still there with us?
Yes, hello.
Hi, do you mind if we interrupt and skip to some questions for you?
Not at all.
Fantastic. So folks, if you have any questions for Kelly, please use the chat function. If you're unsure of where to find that, you can hover over the top or the bottom of the screen. Oh, someone.
Hi, Melissa. I see a message from Melissa here. Melissa didn't know Point Ellice House was here. We hear that pretty much every day that we are open. We have visitors. That's one of the most common comments that we get is that I didn't know this place was here. I lived here for 40 years, or I've lived here my whole life and I've never been to Point Ellice House. I think part of that has to do with where we're located. As I mentioned in my talk, we're at a dead-end street sandwiched between a bunch of industrial sites, and most people don't come down our street unless they're dropping their garbage or the recycling off. So, but interestingly, Point Ellice House has been a private and then public museum since 1967. So it has been here for a long, long time. But I think a lot of people are just discovering us for the first time. And we look forward to seeing you. We're hoping to open July 4th. So stay tuned for more information about that on our social media channels and our website.
Thank you, Kelly. I would love to know more about the partnerships you've had with local businesses. Are you able to share a bit more about that?
Absolutely. Not unlike Melissa's comment about not knowing Point Ellice House was here, a lot of our neighbors, past site managers had not really reached out to a lot of our neighbors. And so one of the first things I did when I took over here was literally go door knocking and just popping into businesses, whether they were the steel recycling plant or the local brewery, and just introducing myself and telling them about what Point Ellice House was about. A lot of that started with Archaeology Day. In 2019, we had Archaeology Day where we invited a number of organizations such as the Archaeological Society of BC and other local heritage orgs to come set up on our beautiful lawn and talk about archaeology in the Victoria area. And when we did that, I invited one of our restaurants to set up their food truck, restaurant that's in the neighborhood, and one of the breweries to set up to serve alcoholic and non-alcoholic drinks. And we had, 300 people come in 4 hours. And it was really amazing for everyone, not only for us and for the visitors, but for the businesses as well. And it really increased the profile of the site and of the great businesses that are around us. And really, I just have kept up with that since then. And I've also invited the local businesses to bring their staff to Point Ellice House free of charge, just so that anybody working, at the coffee shop up the street or even at the steel recycling facility can say, hey, have you ever been over there to our neighbor's place? Or, oh, you're looking for somewhere to eat your ice cream? We have an ice cream shop up the street. You should take it to Point Ellice House and eat it, on the lawn next to the gorge waterway. And that's been really excellent. And I think, we're just building momentum here. So the pandemic has definitely put a bit of a wrench in that, but I'm hoping that with projects like the South Garden Rehab, we can continue to increase our profile in the community.
That's amazing. And do you mind me asking what you are planning to plant in the coming days for your gardens?
Yes. Anything from mustard greens to tomatoes and cucumbers. The mustard greens are being started by the city of Victoria, and they're great for salads. And so when Sandy Merriman House told us, you know, one of their goals would be to be able to provide salads to their clients, we got the mustard green, or we've ordered the mustard greens from the city. We're also have some apple trees that we got from cuttings from the historic house Ross Bay Villa, which is also here in Victoria. They have some heritage apple trees. So a couple of years ago, we got apple tree cuttings from them, graftings, I guess, and we're going to be planting these historic apple trees. We're going to have raspberries and blueberries, and if we can find some, it's been difficult to find them right now, on top of other veggies like onions and carrots, we're going to hopefully plant some hops. Hops take a little bit of time to establish, but in 2 to 3 years, we might have enough hops to have one of the local breweries create a Point Ellice House specific brew. So another way that we've used the gardens to kind of tap into what our local businesses around us are all about, and what's of interest in the community too.
That's fantastic. And where can people keep up to date on what you folks have going on and the gardens?
We have all the social media channels. We have a Facebook page, of course, facebook.com/Point Ellice House. Instagram, where you can see some beautiful pictures of our gardens, including our peonies, and our roses are coming out right now. Lilacs are just finishing. And we're also on Twitter as well. And our website, pointellicehouse.com/blog. We do a weekly blog where we share artifacts from the collection or stories about the site. Sometimes we uncover archaeology, like we did. We uncovered a historic brick, well, more than one, but one in particular during the South Garden project that I researched and wrote up a little blog post. So because we have a historic house, a collection of 10,000 artifacts, 2 acres of heritage designated gardens, plus the longest natural shoreline on the Gorge Waterway, there's always a lot going on here, and there's always more to learn, and we're doing the best we can to kind of keep people updated and interested about what we're learning day to day here at Point Ellice House. And our website is pointellicehouse.com.
That's wonderful. Now, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious. Are you folks doing anything for Museum Week?
Not other than our normal sort of artifact of the week. I've been trying to keep up with the Museum Week posts and hashtags, but as the only full-time staff member here at Point Ellice House, it's a lot to keep up with all of the content that people are putting out there, which is amazing. I've set the goal for myself and our staff to essentially do one thing a week, one kind of prominent thing a week. And that is right now our artifact spotlight, which I mentioned just before. And the idea there is really, you know, if we can at least do one thing, I think we won't stretch ourselves too thin, but I think it's enough to keep people engaged and learning.
I completely understand, and I love the idea of one thing a week. Sometimes, you know, that's the goal you have to have. I also really appreciate you joining and participating in Museum Week by coming onto this webinar today. I believe we might have Mary, who's been able to rejoin us. So let me see if I can sort out that technology. You can just give me a moment and stand by. Mary, I've unmuted you.
And I'm here.
Beautiful. Now I'm unsure of making you a panelist.
I don't know how to do that either.
Well, maybe we'll just stick to just having you share over the phone about what you folks have going on. Would that be all right?
I think that would be fine. I was trying to rejoin using video, and all of my reconnects unfortunately didn't work out. And just as I was passing you off to my fabulous coworker to teach you about what our composting program is like,
I'm
so I want you to
sorry.
It's okay, it's not you. My coworker Joe is still trying to connect via Zoom with the link that you sent me, so I'll phone in the meantime, and he'll try and still get in with some video in the meantime.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to mute myself and let you take it away.
Awesome. All right, so Potato House, when we took over 10 years ago from buying from the second owner, from the Quintellas, the house had been left unmaintained for several years. Part of the reason that Mr. Quintella was selling was because it was just too much work for him to maintain this huge garden. And he had several properties around town, and this one was the least up to date. It was completely original with the knob and tube wires and the lead pipes and, you know, the good stuff that comes with old houses, lead paint. So what we discovered is we wanted to be able to capitalize on that Victoria or wartime victory garden sort of feeling, knowing that this was a subsistence garden in the past and that it was something that the community really recognized this location for. And so to do that, we needed to be able to rejuvenate the soil. As it turns out, myself and my coworker Oliver, again connecting to Point Ellice House, we're both waste reduction experts in our default world lives. So when we're doing other things besides Potato House, we're both teaching people how to compost with worms or recycle or live in a lower footprint kind of way. And so it made sense for us to invite our community, because here in Williams Lake, we don't have curbside organic pickup, to create an opportunity for our community to bring us their delicious organic waste with very specific caveats, and also for us to get the soil we needed to rejuvenate our gardens so that we can grow and make this landscape back to that subsistence gardens and victory garden kind of feel. Now, at the time when we started 10 years ago, there wasn't a community garden in town. There now is another one, but we work in partnership. So Potato House was the only one for a little while where someone, seniors or people who live in town in small spaces, would be able to have access to soil. And we've had a whole range of community members over time garden with us. We've had members of our First Nations community. We've had a local restaurant with growing their greens for their buffet, Ming's restaurant right down the street. They were growing all of their veggies here with us. And then to be able to feed all of that, we needed some compost. Now, the great thing about compost is that we have a compost expert here with us. So for a moment, or several, I'm going to pass it over to Oliver so he can tell you about the great things he does making this place green.
Okay. I guess there's no video, just audio here?
We're still trying to get video on those.
Okay, cool. So my name's Oliver. I'm, like Mary said, a waste educator in Williams Lake as well. And what we started off doing here is because just like any community garden or garden space, you inevitably end up with some leftovers from the garden, you know, when you're cleaning up in the fall and stuff like that. So we started one small backyard pallet style compost bin. And that eventually grew to 2 or 3 side by side because the materials started adding up. And then because we're waste educated, we decided to promote the fact of diverting your organics from, oh, sorry.
I keep talking.
Okay. Instead of getting those food waste to go to the landfill where we know that creates methane gas, it's the problem. And we're going to go back to, honestly, heritage ways by putting everything that was thrown away from the kitchen back right into the garden. So we started a composting program here. And we started accepting compost from people around town. So just slowly but surely over the years, our 1 pallet bin turned into 13. So a pallet-sized backyard composter is about 1 meter by meter by meter. So if you just put it, all those are full, it's about 13 cubic meters of food waste. So over the last couple of years, we've definitely seen a major increase because, like Mary said, we have restaurants participating with growing in the garden area. We also have restaurants participating with dumping their food waste. Here in Williams Lake, you do get charged for on the weight of your waste. So if you're a restaurant, you have a lot of food waste in your garbage, the cost can go up. So here we provide a service where they can just come here and dump it for free. We don't do pickup, but we come and dump your food waste only. So we accept the typical things that you'd want in your backyard compost, which is just fruit and veggies, minus the produce stickers, please. We don't take meat or dairy or anything like that, just so we can keep control of vectors, which would be things like crows, birds, mice, rats, deer.
We don't have any rats in Williams Lake.
Bear, yeah. So we do our best to manage this properly. For those of you who know anything about composting, it's all about getting the right combination of carbon-rich materials and nitrogen-rich materials together to get yourself the perfect recipe for it to start baking for you. So in the fall, we do a massive leaf litter collection program and gather about 400 bags of leaves together, which I use as my carbon additive for all the food waste that comes into our composting program. So over the entire course of the year, we're open. We are Canada's only drive-through compost facility. You could literally cruise up the alley and throw your apple core out into the compost bin that's open. And then I come down every couple of days and layer it with some carbon material. And then eventually that involves into aerating the piles and making sure those microorganisms are kept alive so they can continue the composting process. So there is a fair amount of back work and shoveling involved. But that's okay. When you love something you do, it's pretty easy to come down here and get yourself a free workout. So I do that every once in a while to help aerate the piles. And then usually after about 4 or 5 turns, we end up with a finished product. So we have 2 styles of sifters and screeners on site. I built one out of some old wire mesh and a Shelter Logic tent that broke apart and made myself like a hand sifter. Which was definitely a good upper body workout. And we've transitioned into a rotating drum sifter just last year, which has been a huge improvement on our feedstock. So we actually have a lot of material that we have available, like finished soil amendment. Once it's screened, we call it the original black gold. And people have been coming in droves this year because of the pandemic and everybody's gardening, looking for our soil amendment, which has been super awesome. It's good to get people's hands back into the ground, back gardening, and that to me is part of a heritage living, is growing food in your backyard and recycling all the organics you possibly can back into your garden. We can capture a lot of carbon that way with healthy growing plants and actually save that methane creation that happens in the landfill with organics. So we've become a huge educational site for composting. It brings people down here. Just hanging out here for an hour, we've already had 3 or 4 people come by and drop off their food waste. And so in turn, we can offer things like we sell kitchen catchers for people to buy from us with our fancy logo and things to put in there or not. We have a finished soil amendment that we ask for a $10 donation for a 30-pound bag. We can't officially sell it, so we ask for a donation for that. And we sold or got a lot of donations this year for our soil amendment, so that was super great.
Tell them about the Friday Black Gold sale that we had. The like super crazy day. All of our processed 70 bags, 70 30-pound bags. And then the bags are like chicken food bags and dog food bags that are made out of the same kind of material as a tarp. Get it all ready to go. We let people know, first come, first serve. They lined up, all like COVID, social distancing, safety pants. And we had cars lined up and people lined up. And we're like, we're opening at 1. We sold in 7 minutes. Gone.
Yeah, we sold out.
And now we have a lineup of like, what, 90?
Yeah, I had to end up sifting a whole bunch more soil amendments. Like I said, this pandemic has made people turn into instant gardeners, which is awesome in my eyes. And yeah, we sold out another 90 bags. And now I'm actually officially sold out and don't have any finished compost to make available for the public out there. So it's super exciting and it's great for us too. It's definitely put us on the map for composting and just promoting that type of heritage living, right? So, and yeah, I mean, is there people like, can they ask questions? I'm available for questions if you have any questions regarding composting or how it works on a site in the city in a public area.
Absolutely. So I will invite any listeners to type in the chat function now if they have any questions for, it was Oliver?
That's right, yeah, Oliver.
And I'm here too, this is Mary.
For Oliver and Mary about composting or about the project they have going on.
Okay, I guess we can't see the chat box, so you can.
Oh no, I'll read it out for you. I'll get us started just because I'm super interested. Have you been chatting with folks about what it is that they're using the compost for? Like you mentioned, lots of folks are really excited to get gardening during this social distancing times, and I was just curious what people are doing with their compost.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely, there's definitely had a lot of first timers this year come and pick it up. And the people who have come back over and over, they always love to brag about how good the stuff works. I'm always like, oh, so what do you use it on? And people use it from growing food, vegetables, to their flower beds, or their favorite rose bush really loves it, or their apple trees are loving it. And it's just like, yeah, all their stuff in their backyard. And we've even promoted, like, you can put it on your lawn if you want your lawn to get a bit greener as well.
We've also had people use them to make compost tea, where they'll like soak it in water and then drain off some of the nutrients so they can water direct to their plants. And we encourage people to not just use it as the sole matrix that you're growing your plants in, that you're going to mix it in with your regular topsoil, because this is pretty potent stuff. So you want to like spread it out. We always encourage people to compost directly with their plant to provide your soil, what is that word you use?
Soil amendment.
Soil amendment. Soil amendment directly to the plant, so you're not amending your weeds as well.
That's a good suggestion. We have a question here from Kelly. Does Potato House find that the compost service also generates interest in the historic home itself?
Yeah.
That's a great question, and a lovely caveat for me to jump in. So one of the things that we do with our composting program is use it for shameless promotion on both sides. So if we're doing a garden gig where we have live music in the garden on one side of the house, we'll always mention, hey, can you guys smell that? And they'll all look around and be like, no. It's like, yeah, that's our composting program. And we process a ton of organic waste a month. And you can't smell it. So compost done right doesn't smell bad. So we're dispelling the stink stigma. And then the reverse happens as well. So people will be coming by and dropping off their compost and then being like, so does somebody live there? What is that? That just looks like a war house. Why is that protected? Because none of them are protected. We're the only one. So it creates this really great partnership between the two places, and it speaks to the history of the house as well as the benefit of like how these old houses, their yard was an extension. It's not just the house. Their landscape is the character defining element, and you're able to show that this piece of land, their inside is their outside, and their outside was always inside as well. So all the pieces are interconnected. They're not distinct, like I'm in the house and I don't go outside except to let my dog out. It's a very different kind of living, and that people are getting reconnected with now, especially with what's happening with the pandemic, because everyone's stuck at home.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions in our chat or our Q&A, and I'm so sorry that we weren't able to get the video to work. Where could folks go to check out the Potato House and to check out your composting?
For sure. I was just going to quickly add too on the other side of combining the heritage with the composting, because we're such a diverse facility. We've actually been able to raise some funds this year for composting, which in turn helps preserve our heritage site. So if you keep your diversity going on your site, you can definitely open your doors to more funding opportunities. So
well said.
yeah, and if you guys want to follow along, we're definitely available on Facebook at Potatoe House Project, or on Instagram, same thing, Potatoe House Project.
Thank you so much. I believe that Mary mentioned that Potato House Project also does live streaming on Tuesdays. Is that correct?
We did some live streaming at the Potatoe House Project through the place that Mary and I work at. It's the Caribou Conservation Society. And there we're doing live streaming on Tuesdays, Trash Talk Tuesdays, and sometimes we happen to be at the Potato House as the site. So
everybody wanted to know about composting, so we did a film at the Potato House.
Yeah, those videos are available on the Potato House Project Facebook page, though.
Amazing. Sure. Thank you so much. I want to thank you, Potato House Project. I also want to thank Kelly from Ellice House and Reagan and Libby for joining and sharing what their organizations have going on to support their community. For anyone who missed it a little bit earlier, I did mention that we have another webinar coming up for Museum Week, which is this Friday, May 15th, where we'll just be chatting with some folks about what the future might look like, or some things to keep in mind for the future as we move forward. There will be a survey coming into your inbox soon, so please do fill that out, as that helps us develop future webinars. And if you would like to check out Ellice House or the Potato House Project, I will be sending an email out following this webinar with a recording of this webinar, as well as a link so that you can check out both of those sites and see what they've got going on. I'll also pop a link to the Listener in Residence project as well, if you'd like to explore that further. And just a reminder that if you would be interested in joining the BC Museums Association, some of the benefits are funding opportunities, free webinar participation, reduced registration fees for annual conferences, regional workshops and other special events, access to professional development resources, that support you, your work, as well as the Roundup magazine, regular e-newsletters, access to job postings, contract opportunities, and more. And I just wanted to extend a wonderful thank you again to all of our presenters today, and to you for listening and joining us and being patient with our technical difficulties. So thank you so much for joining us, and do follow along for the rest of our museum week. And I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.